All right, freaks, welcome back. In the first video series, I suppose, we broke down the audio. We looked at the reflections. We measured them against the map to confirm they actually aren't random noise and they actually fit to a surface within that courtyard. Today, I'm going to take that a little bit further. We're going to test the alleged shooter location using real timing, real geometry, and real measurements. Before I get into the mic breakdowns, let me quickly remind you what we learned in Series 1, because it's important groundwork for what we are about to do. What we did in the last lot of videos was prove that the audio actually measures to selected surfaces across the courtyard. We needed to make sure they're consistent across all four microphones and they're not artifacts or compression glitches. We also showed that the audio has enough detail and time and precision to measure the distance. So we can actually measure the map and reflections in physical space. That's everything we established in the first series, and now we're going to build on that by testing a shooter location and measuring the reflections to see whether they match up to each microphone. And in doing so, we shall see whether or not the shot could have been taken from either or whatever location you want to propose. Some of you might be aware because you saw the Trigger Smart video, but some of you might not. If you haven't seen that video, definitely go check out Trigger Smart. It's a good guy, old Matthew. So what I've done is I've taken each of the actual audio itself, the actual audio file, and I've just used a simple EQ, and I've broken it down into frequency bands. So we've got really high frequencies at 18 kilohertz, and it travels all the way down to really low frequency at 40 kilohertz. And this is important because you can separate out what is an actual reflection, where it actually is, and you can see it across bands, so you can determine whether, for example, it's the microphone that was dropped or whether it was an actual reflection in the audio itself. This gives us a much clearer image to measure, and I've broken it down across every microphone that we've got, and I have transcribed that information into an Excel grid and color coded and worked out the average meterage for that group. The way I've done this is I've essentially just found the halfway point between the longest and the shortest, and it's given me an average distance. And the goal here is not to measure it's not to measure each and every brick. It's just to see how the audio rays respond in real space. You know, I'm not trying to rebuild the architecture, you know, and it's all about the audio. And as you can see, I've gone through and I have essentially just build it up from these four mics. I haven't done all the mics yet because some of them are in stereo, some of them are in mono. The ones we're working with today, they will all be in mono because the stereo adds extra things to consider, and different measurements become available, as I've already shown in the first season with the TDOA stuff and the waveform stereo analysis of seeing which way the sound was actually traveling. If you like this kind of stuff and want to see more, then hit the like, subscribe, all of that. Can't even do it, man. Whatever. As I put in my post, these are the alleged shooter positions that we are going to be testing to start with. I have been sent various others, and of course I will test them as well. The goal is to pick a microphone and measure the direct path to the mic from the location, and then measure each reflection coming off of a surface to see if it can make that journey in that time. In doing so, we will eliminate the impossibilities and we will highlight the possibilities. Today, we're going to look at Tyler Robertson's location on the Losee Center, and we're going to measure those reflections against those 4 mics. So before we begin actually looking at all the data itself, I think it's important we understand the difference in the reflections and what's actually going on. So what we need to do is we need to determine between early reflections, late reflections, and the main reflection, first one and the second one. Anything after that can be a little convoluted and complex, so it can get a little wild. So there's no point going down to like the 5th reflection or whatever. Like you'll see what I mean in a second. But suffice to say, if the purple line is the direct path, that is the sound traveling to the mic. So when you hear the first boom of the sound wave, in fact, I can just show you this little bit here where the actual shot was taken. The sound would have to travel down this path here. Now, when we're talking about early and late reflections, the way I deal with it, and I'm pretty sure this is the way to deal with it, is we have to look at the way the audio is traveling and the reflections it accrues along the way. So if I stick a position on Tyler Robinson there and we follow the circle down the line, this is what the audio is going to do. And as the audio goes out, you can see it's going to hit here. It's going to start approaching here. Each one of these will be a place that can reflect the audio. And as it keeps going out, obviously, you're going to get more surfaces that line up. Now, everything that happens along this path, as this audio approaches the mic, is an early reflection. It happens because it arrives just after the original sound, hence the name early reflection. Now, once the sound has actually hit the microphone, what actually happens is it's not going to stop. So it's going to carry on, and then it's going to hit this back wall, and then it's going to hit up here. And these are going to create the late reflections, which are going to then come back to the mic after it's passed the microphone. Then what we have is R1 and R2. Now, these are a little bit bigger. They are literally the atmosphere bouncing around the courtyard. So we measure out from the microphone and back. So say the reflections over here, we have to measure from the microphone to that surface and back again because the sound has already passed the microphone. So we have a distinct set of reflections to separate, and that's exactly what we have done in this grid. As you can see, we've got early reflections, late reflections. We've got the alleged thump. Now, fine, it can be a thump, it can be a reflection. It doesn't really matter for this test. It's irrelevant. We've got a repeat of that thump. Again, with the meterage added on the end, we've got reflection 1, reflection 2, reflection 3, reflection 4, reflection 5. Now, the lower reflections will always be bigger and they will always take longer. And this is because the way a bass wave works. As you can imagine, a 40 hertz bass wave is 8.5 meters long, I believe, and 4.3 meters wide. And you have to consider how that propagates, because the waveform itself, I mean, it's going to take a full revolution and a bit more to be able to be audible. Now, it's not like, if you think of the way the microphone works as well, like the bass, all the sound is hitting the microphone at the same time, but the bass wave is so much bigger that it actually takes a lot longer to move the atmosphere than a short treble wave. This is why when you look on the microphones, you're going to see the treble first, and then you're going to see the bass. And you can actually see this in the waveform itself. So if we come down to 40 hertz, you can see it's a lot more spread out. Yeah, they're still there. The reflections are still there. But then if we start going up, you can see that it starts getting more and more, I don't know, excited. It's probably a bad example on this mic because of the AGC. But you'll be able to see it on pretty much every single one. You see around 500 to 250 hertz. You get quite a lot of activity. This is because the microphone diaphragm itself, it can register these frequencies a lot quicker than it takes for the actual bass wave to move. Another couple of caveats as well is high frequency content is a lot more directional. It bounces a lot easier. Surface size to frequency of the reflection is also very important. As you can imagine, a 40 hertz wave being 4.3 meters wide and 8.5 meters long is not going to reflect off of this pergola, for example. It would need a big solid building and a solid mass to be able to reflect that around. Bass waves will just engulf and saturate and evolve past an object. It won't move. It won't reflect from something that's too small. High frequencies is, as I just mentioned, is also another thing to consider, and medium. So if we take this building here, for example, you can see that this side here is concrete. That's going to reflect lower frequencies. I think each one of these squares is about 9 to 10 meters square. So you can see that's 8 meters wide, say, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I mean, like roughly 8 meters wide, 6 meters wide, 7 meters wide. It's big enough to reflect a 40 hertz bass wave. Whereas the glass itself, obviously dependent on thickness, is going to basically allow the bass waves to travel through until it hits a solid mass and then will come back out. So that's if it doesn't go all the way through and out the other side, depending on the building structure and everything inside it. You could have plasterboard walls, for example, and again, the bass is just going to go straight through them. I don't know if you've ever experienced noisy neighbors before, but that's exactly that's exactly that problem. The bass just goes everywhere. The windows themselves, as I said, they're going to let the bass go through, but they are going to reflect back the higher frequencies. And that is dependent, and that the tone of that is dependent on how many sheets of glass there are to how thick they are. I mean, we don't have that information, but we can determine that the bass is going to go straight through this building to a certain extent. It might hit halfway and then come back out again, depending on the wall structure inside, etc., etc. But it's kind of irrelevant. It's overkill for what we're measuring. So we don't really have to worry about it other than the frequency content and whether the surface, wherever it may be, is big enough and solid enough to actually reflect that wave. Mr. Dinkles and I just wanted to wish everybody in America happy Thanksgiving. Hope your bellies are full and the in-laws, you little bugger, and your in-laws aren't too intense. Okay, let's start with microphone front right, 12 meters from Charlie's location. So as discussed, we have the direct path, and we need to have a look at the early reflections and see if they can compute. The idea is just to measure and see if they pass or fail. I mean, there's nothing too spectacular about it, and I have been keeping notes along the way to include the maths and obviously reasons why some don't work and some do. So this one here, we have a 7.27 meter failure. And this is because if we go over to this one, you can see that 7 meters does actually hit this corner. But the problem we have is that it would actually be twice the distance if it traveled to this corner, because the sound's already traveling away by the time it's got there, and by the time it's got back to moving forward, the the wave has already moved past. Is already traveling down this line pretty quickly. So I failed it because it should be half that distance, and there is no reflector there for this to work, to produce a reflection, shall we say. And the same at this end. Again, there's not much for it to reflect off, being that the sound is traveling this way. So I failed early reflection 1 for that reason. Now, early reflection 2, we actually have a pass. So I can make the distance of this 149 meters, which is the direct path, adding the difference, the extra path, to come out with the total path length, to be able to determine whether the reflection could have been sourced off of this this surface, for this microphone. So for that reason, it is a pass, and we can just look at the measurements. 148. I mean, move it a little bit, whatever. It's within a tolerance. It's totally fine. And obviously, I am using Google Maps. It could be slightly in or slightly out, but as you can see, the 149 meters, I will give that a pass. So as for the early reflections for the front right meters, front right meter 12. Front right 12 meter mic, we have 1 pass, 1 failure. I will say that any 1 failure is not good enough, but we will carry on and we will continue to be generous. So the late reflections, again, as I demonstrated before, the sound will come out, hit the mic. These are the ones that happen along the way. And then the late reflections are what bounces back after that happens. So we have there's no clean placement, so it's a fail. Again, everything's added up using the difference in the grid and the difference in the audio itself. So I can't actually place 165 meters. Now, if I move it around, you can see that these aren't far enough away. There's nothing there. I mean, you come out to 165 and you're up on the roof. So for me, the late reflections, see, that's too far away, too close again, too close. And I think at a certain point, we have to cut this side of the courtyard off. And that is because there is your walkway. All of this is going to be sending the sound that way. It's not going to be, it will go over if you took the shot from there, let's just flip this round. If you took the shot from there, you can see that it's higher. So it will travel over the top of this to some extent. But as I said, bass waves are not going to turn corners unless they have something to make them turn corners. So frequency obviously is going to be very dependent for this area in the courtyard. But for the most part, you can't get the audio to come over this way. You could say the higher frequencies, they're a lot more directionals. They could clip off the edge of the building and head down a little bit, hit the pergola and bounce up. Totally normal. But for the lower frequencies and low mids, you're not going to get that direction. But suffice to say that for the late reflection 1, I can't place it, so it's a fail. Then we have a look at late reflection 2 at 191 meters. Again, I can't place it cleanly without forcing it to make more reflections. And what I mean by that is if it has to do a complex path, say it comes from Tyler's location, bounces off there, then hits the mic, it would create more reflections. You would get one come off of here. You'd also get one come off of here. You'd have a double up. You would be able to measure that. So we're using simple path for that reason. as it is the right thing to do. But both L1 and LR1 and LR2 both fail. You can't place them anywhere in there, to my recognition anyway. So let's move on to the thump. Again, if it's a thump, then quite rightly it will fail a reflection test, So, I mean, totally normal. But if I'm treating it as a reflection, which I am, which does, again, is irrelevant, doesn't matter. We can have a look at 191 meters. We've got 199 meters there. So we've got 199 meters. Again, is the sound going to hit there and be able to reflect this way? Well, reflection law says no, because if the sound hit this direction, the problem you've got is it would reflect this way, create another reflection, go this way, and say okay, it hit the mic from over in this corner. It still doesn't make the 199 meters. It's too long. So we can say pretty confidently that the audio, the thump reflection doesn't work from there. And again, I can hear everybody I can hear everybody screaming, "That's because it's a thump, you moron!" And you're probably right, and I don't mind. It doesn't matter. Again, we're just working out the reflections. So then we have path R1, which comes out from the mic and back again. Now, the problem we've got with this one is there's nowhere for the sound to reflect from the mic. So it will have to travel past, hit the wall, then bounce over, and then bounce back. Now, I can make the path length, which was 130 meters, 38 meters, but the reflection must bounce off the wall behind front right 12. This is because there is no reflection point at the mic. In order for this to occur, the ray must double up at the mic. So what I mean by that is the sound will travel down the direct path. It will be heard. It will hit the wall. It will come back, and it will be heard again. We're not witnessing that. There is no double up in the audio at that time. So we can rule out the fact that the sound reflected off the back here came back up and come back down, pretty consistently as well, because you would measure all of that in the reflections. You can't escape that fact. And again, that is another failure. And then we have a look at R2. So R2, we fail. Look how long it is. Where if I put a radial in, where along that line are you going to get that from? Well, where are you going to get that line? Where is it going to attach to? It's far too far, and again, I've got another locator here it's the same as that one, obviously halved. But yeah, you get the point. Again, it's coming to the Losee. That's a reflection. It's not coming back. It's not bouncing down, bouncing up, and bouncing back. Is what I mean. You're not hearing that double up, so it's a fail. And for mic 1, as you can pretty much see, we've got a failure on several fronts. So that is pretty important information. So again, reflection law, this one works because it actually hits and it actually comes out at a very similar angle, which is what you'd expect from reflection law. The rest of them, I have no idea. I cannot place them from the Losee Center. Oakley dokley, neighbourino. So let's now look at the front left 15 meter mic. This one is about, I think it's 6 meters from the wall. And we just need to put in the direct path. Again, that's the sound traveling to the mic. And let's have a look at the early reflections. So early reflection 1 is a pass, but it's actually down here. Look, it's that circle there. Could have probably made that a bit bigger, but I measured the sections of this building at about 4.5 meters high. So at a 4.5 meter, that makes sense, and you could expect a reflection from that point if the barrel was poking over the edge. So we'll give that a pass. ER2, it says 3 there because I actually put a late reflection in my early reflection folder a minute ago. So we'll just have a look, and we actually get one from here, and it actually makes perfect sense, because let's have a little look. It's actually expected. If a shot rang out from there, the sound would engulf this whole area and it would reflect off of this side. Now, 129.9, you can see that 130 meters there, but you can see if I move it up and down that edge, it doesn't really change the distance, and that's because it's on the way. So we add up the extra path and the total direct path, and we can determine that a reflection could have come off of this side here, and for that reason we give it a pass. Let's open up the late reflections and have a little look. Now let's move that one up there because that's actually first. So this one here is important because this is actually the point at which Charlie Kirk drops the microphone, or it's knocked off the table or put on the table or whatever it was. So and you can see that in the frequency content itself. So if you look here, these orange ones, I marked it as 57.12 meters, but you can see that it doesn't fit within the rest of the pattern. So and obviously the frequency content being below 1 kilohertz down to 40-ish, then you can measure it and you can say, okay, that is the point at which Charlie dropped the mic. So the next one is the late reflection 1, which is what should be called, or late reflection 2, should we call it? I'll put it down there. That fails. The total path length is 123 meters from Tyler's position to the mic, plus the 5.5 meters in the grid there. So that makes 128.5 meters. Now, to go from Tyler Robertson's position to the wall and back is actually 135 meters. And it's too much for the tolerance to allow for. So we don't have that. We don't have that double up, and it's too far away. I think it's 2.8 milliseconds per meter. I think so. If you think 6 meters to the wall, 6 meters back, that's 12 meters. Say 28 milliseconds. 30 milliseconds. You would see a double up in the audio, and you don't. So that one is a fail for that reason. But the next one is a pass. It doesn't look like it's attached, but if I turn off the 3D, then you can say that actually does attach. But that actually makes 180 meters exactly. So we can say, yep, sure, we'll just pass it. I'm not, I'm not really committed to either. Or so we'll just give it a pass. And I think that is pretty reasonable. We'll open up the thump. It's 191 meters, and I can actually make that off of this building. Now, the angle of the building, obviously, and reflection law, is a little bit skewed, but I can accept it on the basis that if the microphone is there, then the shot was taken from there. The sound would radiate out. Give me a circle. The sound would radiate out, and it would travel down. So that's that. I can accept that. We'll just call that a pass as a reflection. If it's a thump, it's a thump. It's a reflection, it's a reflection. It doesn't matter. So R1 test, and we've got the same problem we had on the front right 12 meter mic. Is there is no 30 millisecond double up here, and there was no double up there, so this one falls short of the mark because we can't pass it unless we can make that extra 30 milliseconds, and the 30 milliseconds is way too much outside of the tolerance to allow for. And then we've got R2, which comes here. I should have probably raised that up, but again, it's the same as the R1. It would have to travel past the mic, reflect off the wall, and you would absolutely, considering that the direct path is pretty square onto the mic. I mean, it might be slightly angled, but it doesn't matter. If you're this close to the wall, no matter where you stand in that sort of semicircle, you're going to hear that reflection, and that you can't escape that fact. So for this mic, we have 3 passes and 3 failures. So I know people will want to say that, RK is 50%, acceptable, but 1 failure is unacceptable, So, with 3 failures, I can't pass these 3 passes. So in total, the whole thing gets failed. Now it is time to look at Bartholomew's footage, the back left 40 meter mic. We need to open up the Losee and put in the direct path. Again, we are coming over the building, but where his position is, I can accept that he would get that. Oh, he would get that initial blast, shall we say, for sure. I mean, we know he does anyway because we got it in the audio. But the direct path goes over the building and to the microphone, which is acceptable because he is actually higher than the mic. And it's just a case of whether the building gets in the way, but you're still going to hear it because of the way the sound radiates. So we can accept that. Let's have a look at the early reflections. Early reflection 1, 152 meters. Well, we're at 152 meters. Where do you want to put it? It's 148. It's 4 meters away. It's out of tolerance. You expect at these distances, 1 to 2 meters realistically. That's probably being generous as well. So I can't reflect it off of there. This is way too far. Again, it's reflection law. You're not going to get it from if it hits there. So yeah, we cannot pass it. I cannot place first order reflection at 152 meters, which is a geometry fail. So for that reason, it fails. 2, that passes. We actually get 1 off of here finally, and this is one of the reflection points we'd absolutely expect if the shot was pointed, is ringing out from this location. You would absolutely expect this whole surface here to reflect and direct. So we can pass that one. What is it? 161 meters. Now that 162, whatever, we can bring it back, forwards, in, out. I mean, whatever. 1 meter, we can accept that. That's fine by me. Reflection 3. This one actually is lining up pretty consistently with this concrete part here. And you got to think about how the reflections spread. Now, the actual sound, as we discussed, radiates out like that. All right. But a reflection, once it hits that wall, it becomes very directional and very linear. So you could imagine the sound hitting that wall, being absorbed up to the maximum amount that the wall can actually absorb. And then almost, it's not instantaneous. You have to wait for the pressure to build up to reflect the sound back. Again, it's Newton's law, equal force, equal and opposite force, and it will push it back. So that's what's creating the reflection there. to my knowledge anyway. So, you know, what we're seeing is equal in, equal out, and it's at the right distance. What is it, 190 meters? 190 meters, pretty spot on. So we can say that that works. You know, we've got the maths there. It's a full millisecond out, but that's okay. You know, within a few milliseconds, so that's okay. We'll just stick with that. Early reflection 4. It's a fail. The only placement is on the surface that already has a reflection, which is this here. So if you get a reflection off of this point here, you're very unlikely to get a second reflection later down the same surface. Now, the different mediums, obviously being a glass building, obviously glass fronted building, you know, will take into consideration, but it's not going to change the fact that the energy is already reflected, you know. So measurements wise, what have we got? 196.7, 197. You can move it to that wall. I don't know if I can turn off the 3D. My mixing equipment's in the way. So you can see 199 meters is actually past the wall. We can put it on that corner. How about that? Look, fine. But it's still not going to change the fact that you're going to get one reflection from this surface, not two. So for that reason, it is a failure. And early reflection 5, again, it's a fail. Nowhere to place a reflection point at 200.85 meters. So let's move it around and have a little look. 200 meters, what was it? 200.85. So just call it 200. That's fine. So 200 again, we're hitting the same surface. Are you going to, you know, you're not going to get boom, 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 boom. The sound can't bounce from there and go this way, then turn a corner, bounce, and then go that way again, and then turn a corner and bounce and go that way again. It's physically impossible. So at 200 meters, we fail it because we have nowhere to put it. Or we go, I mean, yeah, again, so if you want to look up here, and okay, so we'll just say that that is acceptable for a second. Let's think reflection law. The problem you've got is it's going this way, so it would actually have to bounce out that way, then bounce that way, and that would extend the path quite dramatically, as you can see. So for that reason, we have to fail it. There's just nowhere at 200 and whatever meters, realistically. I mean, we'll give it a forced, okay? We'll change it to forced, all right? So what I mean by that is I'm having to force it to do something that it shouldn't do, you know, and we'll color that a different color. You know, inconclusive, shall we say. And let's have a look at the thump. And you notice on this one that the thump happens before the late reflections, which we'll get to a later video, I'm sure. Okay, so from the mic, the thump fails. Again, we've already got a reflection here. We've got a repeat of the thump as well, where it sort of echoes off of something. So again, where do you want to put that? That locator is wrong, but whatever. That is double the length, so it needs to be halved, you know, 105 meters. So where inside there do you want to put it? I mean, it's entirely up to you. It doesn't matter to me, but the point of the matter is it fails because where's it gonna, you know, it's not R1, R2, R3. This is happening with the early and late reflections, or just after, or in between. It's actually, in this mic, is in between, which is very interesting, as I said. So with that in mind, I've got to fail that one too. Let's look at the late reflections. So, as we spoke about already, the late reflections are after the position of the mic. The sound hits the mic there, then comes to these locations and comes back. So where do you want to put it? I mean, we could move it maybe. What have we got? what we got here? While the distance is right and the path can be drawn from the mic, there is no surface at 119 meters for a simple first order reflection. To reach this point, we would have to travel past the mic, reflect from the wall, 8.5 meters behind it, then pass the mic again. The 8.5 plus 8.5, roughly 17 meters extra path would appear as a second instance of the transient. So we would hear it again bouncing off this 8 meter wall behind him, boom, boom. And we don't hear that. Add in the 17 meters to the extra path to Tyler's location. So 119 meters, let's move it over here. You can see, again, it's not going to happen. You know, it's going to have to bounce all the way around here to come back. So for that reason, it is failed. Doesn't really help that I have colored it yellow, but whatever. Just change that real quick. So I fail it for that reason. There's the locator for it. Again, LR late reflection 2 is 129 meters. Again, we've got the same problem. That you'd assume if it's bouncing from down here, that's fine. You know, we could make that up and back again, and we could say forced to an extent because we're not seeing the double up, boom, boom, coming off of this back wall. So we could assume that it comes from down here, and we could assume that it bounces up here and comes back. But this isn't an R1 or R2. This is a late reflection, as I said. So you can't place it. Let's have a look. 129. You know, you're not gonna get it anywhere. You know, it's just not there, is it? So unfortunately, I cannot place that one either. So we'll call that one a failure. There's the locator for it. Okay, so on to R1. Failure. Where along that line, along that circle there, do you want to... I've got a locator turned on somewhere. There we go. So where do you want to put it? I mean, it's 126 meters. That brings us to the Losee Center. I mean, it's not bouncing down, bouncing up and bouncing down because that's twice as long. So where do you want to put it? I mean, the radial is too big for the area unless it reflects off the Losee Center itself, which is impossible unless you double the time that it takes for R1 to appear. R2, again, another failure. I can make the distance up from there, sure, but it's not. I don't even know. That was it, yeah. So for this one, it would have to be an early reflection. You can't have it as R2, like the last reflection in the chain. So I have to fail that one because this one would actually happen a lot sooner than when it actually happens. So for that reason, it is a failure. Okay then, so let's have a little look at the front right 45 meter mic. Now this one's important because it's actually halfway between Charlie Kirk and Tyler Robinson, which we will get into more detail about this mic and the back 7 meter mic later in the video. I don't even want to call it a series because I'm not Netflix, but that's just the way it works. So if the shot came from the Losee, then the audio would arrive in whatever milliseconds it is, but 85 meters. With the direct path, we have 85.6 meters from Tyler Robinson's location to the microphone location. along the purple line. So let's have a look at the early reflection. Absolute fail. And this is because if it reflected from here, it would go off this way. It would channel through all of that. It wouldn't come back this way. And this corner here, which could cup sort of the ray and push it back, is too far away. The other problem we got is there is a building here in the way as well. So if the further out it goes to the right, the more likely it's going to bounce off of this building and end up going up sort of this tree line here and out this way. So for that reason, it is a massive failure. 150 meters, reflection law. Yeah, and the other thing is reflection law. So like I kind of touched on that, I suppose, didn't I? So the ray would actually come out equal in, equal out. So for that reason, it is a failure as well. Look at the late reflections. And again, I can make the meterage up here. It won't reach over here, and there's nothing here for it to reflect off. So I'm stuck here. But we've got a problem is the fact the building is in the way, and that ray is going to come back out here and then come up here and down there again. So we can't pass that one either, unfortunately. For the thump, okay, 122 meters. Again, it will send it the other way. This makes it consistent with a generic low-frequency thump, sure, but it does not explain the complete absence of a strong supersonic crack on this mic. Now, what I mean by that is the crack you would expect to hear should be more predominant on this mic than the back right, the back 7-meter mic and the Bartholomew mic. The ones we've got left and right here, again, they're closer to the line of Charlie Kirk. So we could say that the crack's going to be less pronounced on these because the cone, the Mac cone, if it's a thump, actually stops at Charlie Kirk. Or if you want to go with Matey's theory, stops and gets shot into the trunk. So in order for Bartholomew to get the actual crack to crack, the bullet will have to travel all the way out here. And we're definitely not seeing that, are we? So whether it stopped in Charlie, the trunk, whether it just got shot into the floor is irrelevant. The crack would be more predominant here. So that is where we are looking at for the, that's not really what I wanted to go into, but the thump itself, again, if it's a thump, it's a thump. I don't really care. The point is that if I treat it as a reflection, it doesn't work. Let's look at R1. So I can make the meterage up, sure. I can move it. Let's have a look. 129 meters. Is at 129 meters. So let's jiggle it around a little bit. We got here way too short across there, isn't it? So it's definitely not thumping off the back. Definitely not thumping off that building. The corner's way too far away. The only thing we're left with is this sort of position here. So you'd have to explain to me how you'd get the sound to turn the corner. And if anybody can explain that, then let me know, because I will become absolutely minted by breaking the laws of physics. So, ultimately you cannot you just can't, the sound's going this way. It would have to bounce off this back wall and then travel there and then travel back, which would extend the path massively. I mean, what's it from there to there? 50 meters, right? So 45, 50 meters, so that, and then you've got to think about it traveling. It's just going to extend it massively. So that's an absolute failure as well. And then we'll look at R2. And again, I can make the distance up into this corner, but it's a failure. From the mic out and back, we measure 188 and find the surface. We cannot repass the mic because there is no instance for it in the audio, which means it can't be a complex path. It can't bounce around the courtyard without creating more reflections, and we've only got the one. So that is a failure at 188 meters. I mean, again, we can just jiggle it around a little bit. Again, you're just not going to get 188 meters, you know. There's just nothing for it to really actually reflect from. So for that reason, it is a failure. Okay, now it's time to have a little look at what we could expect from these locations. So if Mr. Robinson did in fact fire the shot, not saying he did or didn't, we can expect actual reflections to occur, and we can plot them on the map just like that. Where is the reflection off of this side? Where's the reflection there? Where's the reflections here, here, here? Like all of these, if the sound came from there, you would absolutely get a reflection coming off of this back wall. There is no way to escape that fact. It's just, you know, in fact, you'd get two because that's 10 meters away, which will give you an extra 20 meters there and back before it rejoins and comes back. So you're just not getting that in the audio. Even if one of these was present, it doesn't excuse the fact the most direct line in the middle there doesn't occur. So for the expected path, we can sort of say that that's pretty much a failure, isn't it? You know, like along with every other reflection there is pretty much a failure. So looking back at the 40-meter mic, we can see what's expected, and we can see what's wrong with what's expected. Again, the sound's going to travel down here, reflection law, equal in, equal out, it's going to travel this way. If it hits here, it's actually going to go that way, but you might get a reflection, you know, a fainter reflection, because again, as a reflection occurs, it's linear. It's not as circular as what you'd expect from an original sound source. So we also have this ledge here on the side here. Where's that reflection? That would absolutely occur. You cannot escape that fact that reflection is in sight. So for this reflection as well, for this mic as well, then it is a complete failure on the reflection, expected reflections. Go to the next mic. I don't know if I've done it for all. I think I have. Again, for this mic, where are these reflections? You know, pick whatever one you want. Move this one to this wall here. I think maybe we do have one on that wall. Maybe. No, we don't. So, okay, you know, however you want to word it, however you want to put it together, where are these reflections? Why aren't any? You could, like, the orange ones are late reflections, the red ones are early reflections. Where are they? You know, and again, you're not going to get two off of the same surface. I mean, maybe this angle might produce some. Maybe the steps might produce some. So where are they? They just don't exist. So we cannot say that is acceptable in any way, shape, or form. And then if we go to the 12-meter mic there and we look at the expected, where are they? I've put two here because you could go from either side of this. It doesn't matter. They're just not there, you know. And again, these later reflections, again, especially this one, is not there. And that one is probably one of the most important reflection points in the whole lot, because you cannot escape the fact that the sound will hit that back wall and it will come back to the mic. And you can measure that. I think it was 15 meters, so 30 meters, or whatever that is, you know, 90 milliseconds, 80 milliseconds, whatever. You know, it's just not there. So you cannot, you know, you cannot fake it, you know. Which brings me to the next question is, can you fake it? So can you fake it? Yeah, I mean, no, you can't. It's, you know, you can bend the audio all sorts, you know, but you're going to hear it slow down, speed up. You're going to, you know, like there's phase tricks you can do and all sorts to measure it, you know. And ultimately, I'm using pretty poor recordings on this one. So to test, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rerun the numbers using audio that has got metadata, and it's well, even if it hasn't got metadata, it's just like a little bit more fresh, and we'll be able to hear that and see that in the waveform and the audio anyway, because the difference between the high peaks and the low peaks in the waveform will be much greater. So, for example, the crowd would be less voluminous, and the direct sound will be much greater in peak dynamic from the top to the bottom of the waveform. So we can definitely do that. And then what I'm going to probably do is use phase correlation as well. And I'm going to basically cancel out, using phase cancellation, I'm going to cancel out the audio. And then I'm going to shift the waveform slightly by a few milliseconds. And that should cancel out a lot of the noise and should leave us with just the transients to work with, well enough to be able to measure directly. And I am also working in mono here. So as I said at the beginning, the stereo adds other equations into the mix and other measurements. So I'm treating them as separate. These four are in mono, so I'm running with that for the minute to test it. And this is also to test to see whether the AGC, the limiter, all of that is going to pose any sort of issue. I mean, there is, as I discussed on Trigger Smart, there is some caveats to that as well. Go watch that video if you wanna see what they are. But like ultimately, we'll test the audio and we'll use some advanced techniques to be able to really solidify the result. And this is how we test it. So, and there's obviously other things we can test with the stereo mics as well. So we will obviously smash that together at some point as well. But I've got other locations to test. And as you can see, these take a little bit of time to do. So there's a lot of measurements. There's lots of guesswork. There's lots of like solidifying. Then there's rechecking. Then there's obviously going through it all and making sure it all makes sense. Then you've got to come up with a reason why it works, why it doesn't work, and it's got to be backed by physics. So, all of that takes time and effort, which obviously I don't mind doing, but it's just it will slow down my production on this stage a little bit, so the videos won't come out as quick. But as for faking it, no and yes. It's a bit of an open question, really, I suppose. No, you can't fake it, because I will test the audio and I will see if it's been played with, and if it has been played with, I can always switch it to mono anyway using my audio programs and work with just a mono signal to measure the distances. I mean, that's all we're doing. There's nothing ridiculously special about it, So to conclude, I've turned on all of the failures. And I think, it's pretty safe to say that with that amount of failures, the sound source did not originate from the Losee Center. I don't know how it can. Anybody can recreate this. I'll tell you what I will do is I will share as I said in Trigger Smart, I will share the project at the end. You can all go through it. You can all pull it apart. You can all try and make reflections fit, and then you can let me know, and then I will test them what you try. I'll provide the Excel document. I'm totally transparent, totally going to be open about it. I'm not trying to guard the information. If anything, I'm trying to upgrade audio forensics for civilians. So we call this Civilian Forensics 2.0, if you will. And for the next little trick I'm going to do, I will take this location here, alleged shooter 3, I think it is. I'll take this one here between the trees, and we'll test to see whether the reflections can be made from there. If you've got like technical questions, I've got an email address available in my description or whatever it is called on YouTube. So obviously email the technical stuff there. If you put it in the comments, I'm just going to skip over it because it takes too long, obviously, to read and reply. And I know a lot of people don't do that, but I like to obviously, make you feel welcome and all of that jazz. So ultimately, yeah, put your questions if you've got technicalities, whatever. If you've got screenshots you want to share, I've got a Twitter account there as well. You can just literally send it as a message if you want, post it on my wall, whatever you want to do. And ask me to test something, I can test it. It's no big deal. But I am going to move through these alleged shooter locations. I've got more to add to the pile as well. Mr. Boykin, he gives me one as well, so I will put that in there. And there's a few others that people have suggested in and around the courtyard. I will say about the palm gun, though, go and have a look on YouTube and listen to what they sound like. If you fired one of them palm guns inside that courtyard, there is no way I will not pick up those reflections and be able to measure it. No way. And even the really quiet guns, you can have a look at the quiet guns if you like, but if you go on ChatGPT, go on any AI, go look on their actual manufacturer's websites, you can see that the quiet guns are still at 90 to 100 decibels. That is considerably loud considering a person shouts at like 60 to 80 decibels, me talking now is probably about 50 to 60 decibels, whatever. But ultimately 100 decibels is still pretty loud. I mean, a bow and arrow string is at about 90, I think, 90 decibels, something like that. So if you bong and pull and, let go of a bow and arrow string, it will make reflections. You can't escape that fact. So we will test these locations. We will see what happens. And thank you for your time.